Yeah, I said I would do this Dawkins video, so yeah, I'm gonna play just pieces of it, parts of it, and we'll see how this goes. So it might be a complete failure and you'll never see this video, or it might be good enough for the website, or who knows, we'll see how it goes. Because I really just don't want to play it again. It's an hour long and I don't remember all of it, but just wasn't that good. So anyway, starting off.
The fact of your own existence is the most astonishing fact you'll ever have to confront. Don't you dare ever get used to it. Don't you dare ever say that life is boring, monotonous, or joyless. One obvious way to express this is the improbability of your own personal existence.
Oh, okay. So anyway, yeah, this is the same old tripe, right? I mean, it's just, sorry, I say fail. Yeah, we should be awestruck at 4 billion years. We should be contemplating the idea of these organisms eating each other. All the wrong ways things could have gone. I mean, the world still could be dominated by dinosaurs. If it wasn't for a stupid meteor impact or a comet, we wouldn't be here, okay? Homo sapien would have stand no chance. Alright, there'd be some kind of 8-legged spiny octopus or something ruling the earth. But it wouldn't be pretty. It would be goddamn disgusting and ugly. There'd be no grace or beauty or dignity or art. Yeah, it'd be a crude, dirty, ugly, it'd be a bug planet. Okay, that's what it would be. Yeah, so you should understand that. There's lots of context here. But this whole idea that, well, even it's just stupid to say, who the hell has no joy in their life? That's almost impossible. So it's just so, these words have no meaning to I think, a rationally intelligent mind. Life isn't all anything. It's a whole pile of shit that happens over years. That's the way we live a life, over a period of years. Ugh. Anyway, so we'll move on a little bit.
We have in Australia marsupial mice, marsupial moles, marsupial flying squirrels, marsupial rabbits, marsupial wolves, and so on. So I'm juxtaposing the extreme luck of our individual existence with the the moderately respectable degree of predictability which natural selection.
All right, so he was just talking about the fact that there's a pattern to evolution in most cases. You will, in isolated populations, you'll end up with these predators and the prey kind of thing happening, and the equation is going to be different depending on what they start with. It gets isolated on an island. It's the continents drift or some other event takes place to separate populations. Those populations will evolve differently. Like the Galapagos Island, very narrow population though, and the predator-prey thing isn't as dramatic. It's, a lot of vegetarian animals dominate. The dodo, for example, easy to kill because, yeah, it evolved on an island where, it didn't have any predators. So, yeah, it was really easy pickings. You could go to, Kiwi land. They got a ton of animals that had no aggressiveness. So again, easy to exterminate. Rats, cats, wipe out all the native population. So this conversation works both ways. Yeah, and it doesn't demonstrate. Well, I mean, it's interesting, but it's not really significant. I don't think.
This is an interesting thought experiment, the idea of rerunning the tape of evolution. It was originally suggested by the American biologist Stuart Kaufman, and he used it in a very interesting way. And I like to use it from time to time. I think Conway Morris is probably going a bit far when he says that humans would certainly have evolved again.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, the idea of modeling a system, good, fine. But we know where the system, we know where 99.999% of life has been for the whole history of life on Earth. And it hasn't been contemplating the universe, hasn't been doing any of that crap. Tiny, tiny fraction One grain of sand in a whole beach of time has been spent by human beings in the history of life doing this high-minded conversation about how joyous and wonderful life is. No, life is a reproducing, a replicating a piece of DNA. A piece of DNA 4 billion years ago, through some mechanism, was rendered capable of reproducing itself. And that has just continued and continued and continued in all these manifestations for no rhyme or reason, to satisfy no purpose, to accomplish no destiny, to do none of that. It's just an accident of biology, of chemistry, to create what we call biology.
Certainly going too far when he says that it is evidence for his weird belief in Christianity.
Yeah, well, then why are you quoting some weird guy believing in Christianity? Yeah, but there's some patterns that, who knows who knows how regular it would be to have a certain number of digits on a hand or 2 eyes. There's lots of these things that are going to be reoccurring patterns. They develop more than one time in evolution, as Dawkins points out, separately. Separate evolutions of these tools. But we know, generally speaking, that some tools are very rare, and intelligent, language-capable intelligence might be preposterously rare, because the one time it did happen, it only happened through a strange quirk of fate, where we were bestowed with the capacity to be highly intelligent 100,000 years ago. We could have gone to school and gone to college and been physicists, but we couldn't because we hadn't developed the language or the knowledge base to do any of that. And so it's a rather bizarre circumstance for evolution to give us a capacity we had no capacity to use fully. Jump ahead, forgot to.
How many times do we think life has arisen independently around the universe?
This is annoying.
Our present state of knowledge allows us to countenance all extremes. It could, on the one hand, be true that life has arisen only once, anywhere in the universe. Or at the other extreme, it could be that the universe is simply teeming with life.
Well, the teeming with life argument's not going to go anywhere, in my opinion. And that's not what the evidence indicates. The evidence indicates a prejudice against life. It hasn't created there isn't a second life form on planet Earth. No evidence of a competing DNA molecule, even one amino acid change. Obviously the pattern is sort of rigid, and we can't duplicate it. Okay, on Earth it's had plenty of time to duplicate it, hasn't, and there's no evidence of any intelligence in the universe anyway. They've had a billion-year head start on us, 2 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion year head start, and they're not there. They're not making any noise. So teeming with life, I think, is a bogus argument. Okay, yeah, it's an open question whether there is, but the question is slanted by the fact that we can't make one, and there's no evidence of more than one ever developing on planet Earth. So that's a pretty strong bias towards very rare chemistry. And you should be able to say that, Mr. Dawkins. You really should. So anyway, he basically says, this is all just flight of fantasy for me. I like to believe there's life in the universe, blah, blah, blah. So he doesn't make any scientific claims. He just says he personally likes the idea of it. I personally find it, I would find it very disappointing if we were going to learn that there's, I don't know, 50-foot cockroaches on some planet somewhere, ripping little sentient beings to pieces and gobbling them up. I don't see what there is to celebrate about that. Sounds pretty awful and nasty to me.
My gut feeling, for what it's worth, and it's worth almost nothing.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, at least he's not saying this is a scientific observation, so I'll grant him that. But the conversation is, scientists shouldn't do this. Shouldn't talk about what they gut feel or what they want to be true. They should be talking about what the evidence demonstrates, and the evidence dominates on this subject. and it dominates, pointing to the fact that reproducing DNA, cellular reproduction, is not common chemistry.
Go to exactly the right tuning position. Because if any one of them is a tiny bit off the correct value, then the universe wouldn't...
All right, so now he's talking about universal constants. I think this is just such a dead subject, and how, you know, some religious people argue that all the universal constants are just right for life to take place and for the universe to have balance and all this other crap, and if the one molecule, I mean one element was a little different, the whole thing would be different. Yeah, of course, it'd be a different universe then. I just don't even see a point in speculating on constants being different in different universes. I mean, if there's different incarnations of the universe, if there's a big bang, it collapses, it expands, it collapses, it expands, the rules are probably going to be the same each time it does that.
Happened, for example, if the gravitational constant was wrong, the idea that the universe that we observe is only one of billions of universes, which are like bubbles in a foam, mutually incommunicado, and an observer in any one universe is unable to see any of the others. And these different universes have different values of their fundamental constants, maybe just random values, or maybe they give birth to baby universes which have mutated values.
Why are you talking about this mush?
And now if you've got billions of universes with different values of the fundamental constants, now the anthropic principle really can kick in a plausible way. Because we now say that there may only be a small minority of universes that have the correct values, where correct means...
Oh, I mean, what's the point of this? I just, you know, let's just make up some kind of three pig story to fit the facts. So we have a, I don't know, we have a bucket of gruel, and it says, you know, Frederick on it. And so now we're just going to make up a story and say, okay, it belongs to the free pigs, and they're going to take it home, and, you know, one of them's called Frederick, and blah, blah. So you're just going to make up some crap, you know, to create an edifice around this thing. For what? Why? Why are you bothering with this nonsense? We don't need to explain the universe. We can't explain the universe. You're never going to explain the universe, because you're never going to be able to analyze the universe before the Big Bang. It just isn't possible.
Conducive to making stars, making chemistry, and
move on.
That it's not religion itself that has a Darwinian survival value, but this is a very common thing that we have to do, we adaptationists. We don't say what is the adaptive significance of this particular thing we happen to be observing. We say this particular thing we happen to be observing may be a byproduct of something else.
Yeah, duh. It's called a gun. Yes, look, religion became successful. The religions that survived were the violent religions. They basically just killed anybody who didn't say yes to their Bible. I mean, literally, Christians showed Bibles to people and said, do you believe in this book? Even though they couldn't read. That's what they did. And then if they gave the wrong answer, like, no, it's just a stupid book and I never read it, then they killed them. And that's how Christianity earned dominance in the world. It's a very cheap victory made of nothing. So he was talking a bit about this whole idea that religion seems a fundamental concept within people, and that's just obvious. Religion's the first science. Religion is what people do when they're ignorant and thrown into a circumstance. If you're thrown into a circumstance with limited knowledge, you're going to have to draw conclusions on limited knowledge. So those conclusions are likely to be wrong, and it just makes perfect sense for a being that can understand its own reflection in the water to contemplate the idea that maybe something else is looking down at it. It seems perfectly reasonable that ignorant humans would draw that conclusion. It's a silly, wrong conclusion, but in the context of complete ignorance, it's a reasonable conclusion. It just doesn't have any reasonable credibility in the year 2011.
And that something else may be what is being... Which is why even small children are so obsessed with fairness. One of the commonest things you'll ever hear a child cry is, "Not fair." They will say that even when the entity accused of being not fair is not another human being at all, not another child, but, for example, the weather. It's not fair that it should rain on my birthday, as though the weather cared for anybody's birthday. So you see where I'm going. I'm trying to build up the picture of the idea of gratitude and the concept of debt as, so to speak, going off in a vacuum.
Yes, this is the part that's spooky religious. Gratitude and debt. I mean, these sounds like religious concepts. He's talking even like a minister. I mean, a Methodist anyway. Yeah, yuck. And the idea that what kids spout, what words they learn, like mommy and daddy being their first words usually, and cat and whatever, that's just the way it works. And fairness is a fundamental concept. As soon as they learn that there's this idea that they can yell unfair, and then there has to be, like umpire has to show up and correct a circumstance. That's what a kid is expressing. You want to make it into something else, I think you're going way too far. It's an expression of a concept, okay, where people can basically call for a referee. That's what the word unfair does. It means I want a referee. Anyway.
Muzzle. It's a beautiful sight to see. One doesn't want to say the dog thinks there's soil there. It's not the way.
Okay, so now he's talking about some different animals, and this is sort of interesting about a beaver who's making a fake dam, and he's talking about, you know, well, everybody's probably seen that. My dog used to do it. I'd give him a bone, and he never would eat the damn thing, you know, because he always wanted to, you know, he had a sense of storing it for later kind of thing. So he'd go off somewhere in the corner of the room, and he'd put the bone down, and then he'd try to push the rug over it, you know, which wasn't going to happen. And, yeah, that's the instinct. And, you know, Arctic foxes bury their food, so probably something in that. There's probably some evolutionary reason. And so, yeah, these are more developed instincts that you have in more primitive animals. They have a lot more hardwired programming. They have reactions to circumstances that are more reflexive. And it's already a pre-written program, like a turtle hatched from the egg, you know, goes through a pattern of behavior that doesn't have much to do with understanding anything. It just has to do with a reflex.
There are quite a lot of people that you can convince to be rational. I think if you're moved to pessimism by the thought that we have at any particular time political movements which seem to be gaining power. I mean, we've had 8 years of Bush theocracy in America, for example, which naturally was very discouraging. But I think if you take the broad sweep of history, you're bound to expect a kind of sawtooth. If you've got a general trend upwards.
Oh, well, wait a minute. You know, if you take the broad picture of history, it's pretty dismal, okay? Because we really haven't demonstrated much capacity to escape this idea that we're going to solve problems with violence. And that's going to be a real problem because as technology gets better and better, and we have drones and we have robots and we have all this other crap, you know, war is going to get insidiously messy. Conflict is going to get insidiously messy. Even these microbes and things can be incredibly destructive. So, I mean, you've got all kinds of weapons that are going to be out there in the hands of people full of hate. And we haven't demonstrated any capacity to do anything to fix this hate problem. So, yeah, you should be a little pessimistic. I think pessimism is the rational perspective.
Can a group of similarly cooperating systems, such as humans in a society, evolve that society forward using those principles?
You have to be careful, don't you? Because Brains clearly are the product of natural selection, and they got big because of natural selection. But what brains do...
Yeah, well, the big thing again, I just don't even think that's the right way to look at what we're doing. Okay, our brains are big for our body size, but we did a lot of different things. I mean, our whole body went upright, did a lot of crap. It's not so much our brains are big; it's that we use them differently. All right, they're not. Our brain isn't bigger than an elephant's or some dolphins. Some different animals have, well-evolved brains. Ours is managed differently, and it's the management of our brain that makes the difference. I mean, there's human beings that are, only 36 inches, they're 36 centimeters high or something. The smallest man in the world is pretty damn short. Got a little tiny brain, okay, but he functions. So, I mean, let's not get too wacky with this whole brain theory thing. Brain size being the factor that matters. And it's all about these ideas anyway. It's about what you fill your brain with. Whether you're filling it with nonsense and rubbish and wishful thinking and daydreams about the wonderful DNA ride, or a recognition that it's not a ride. It's a dumb molecule doing biological experiments. It's not necessary. That doesn't sound like a good idea. Put the molecule in charge? No, doesn't sound right to me. Well, let's see what they are plotting.
Planning a holiday, planning a journey, planning to go grocery shopping, or how to mend their car. It was perfectly good logical reasoning, skeptical reasoning. What might have gone wrong with the car? You eliminate things. You use a sort of scientific method, and you use logic and reason and sense. And then when it comes to religion, it all goes right out of the window. These very same individuals who show no deficiency in any other field of life, their entire mental... I mean, Christopher Hitchens says religion poisons everything. It does, and it certainly poisons the ability to use your brain.
Yeah, but it's a product of a brain, so you got to recognize what it is for what it is. And so, yeah, it's an emotional crutch, or whatever you want to call it. It's a mechanism of tradition and socialization that people become dependent on. And it's a strong preference. It's a strong attachment. And so, yeah, you need a strong argument to break it, unfortunately.
Earlier replicator that did something like the same job as DNA, something like the same self-replicating job as DNA, but was not DNA, was a low-tech replicator. The problem with DNA as a high-tech replicator is that it requires protein in order to do its job of self-replication. So that's what's been called the catch-22 of the origin of life. So the Cairns-Smith idea, and I think it's probably right in general, though his particular candidate for the precursor probably may not be. He thought it was inorganic crystals. I think he's right that something had to come before DNA. And the most promising candidate at the moment is the so-called RNA world theory. If you think about it, DNA is very good at replication, protein is very good at being an enzyme, and each of them is lousy at doing the other thing. Protein is a hopeless replicator because a protein molecule is all tied up in a knot, and therefore the amino acid sequence that defines the protein is not accessible, cannot be read out in the way that you could read out the sequence of DNA. So protein's a good catalyst, DNA is a good replicator, each is lousy at doing the other.
I guess he's just basically saying that, yes, the first living thing, the first reproducing cell, was a perfect storm mixture of more than one thing. That's right. Two mints in one, or something like that.
RNA is reasonably good at doing both. RNA is a replicator of the same kind of system as DNA, and RNA is also not a very good catalyst, but it can serve as an enzyme. And so the RNA world theory is that before DNA took over, it was RNA that served both roles, both the replicator and the executive role of enzyme, and that DNA came in as a later takeover.
As an add-on, maybe. Possibly. But whatever. Yeah, the point is it's complex. It's complicated. Chemistry. Nuanced. Oh, another applause. Let's see what that was.
Argument. Therefore, if you try to argue against me, I'll cut your head off. It's really an admission of defeat. I am not one of those who thinks that we should go out of our way to insult Islam recklessly or foolishly, because it doesn't do any good to get your head cut off. What we should say is something like this. I may...
Well, why don't you stay out of their countries and quit stealing their shit, and then maybe you have a right to sit there and ridicule them. Maybe. Ugh, let's take this shit. Islam. Islam has nothing to do with what's going on in the world. You can keep pretending it does, but it doesn't. If there were Arabs, even non-Muslim Arabs, in the United States, fucking with our country, there'd be lots of right-wing Christians trying to blow their fucking heads off.
Like this narcissistic feeling of omnipotence, and you cry and something will happen and you'll get sustenance. But later you have to move out of a metaphorical Eden into and lose your ignorance and gain the power to model the world around you. And
I think I'm going to stop you. I'm listening to you with great interest, but
I love that. Why don't you just say, will you get to the fucking point, you dumb cunt? I mean, I don't need all this metaphorical bullshit conversation. Okay, yeah, life is like the Garden of Eden, and we start off really dumb, and then we have to go out into the real world and make a living and pick up rocks and bang our head with them.
This is going to amount to you giving me a tutorial on what he says, because I haven't read it. And so I don't think I'm going to be able to give you an interesting answer. What I must do is go away and read it. And thank you.
Nice evasion. Yeah, you really pussied out there. Could have just said, fuck you, but no. Let's see what his last words are.
Darwinian. I was trying to find a biological Darwinian explanation for religion, and it goes without saying that culture is going to be the medium in which that actually happens. And my suggestion was that biological, psychological predispositions manifest themselves as religion in the right cultural context. Are there animals that have a culture which could be regarded as, in any sense, religious? Non-human animals, of course, we must say, because we are animals. People have suggested, I think that the most haunting suggestion comes from the work on elephants.
I knew it.
Douglas Hamilton and others, suggesting that elephants have a respect for their dead and show some kind of something that looks like reverence for the dead.
Yeah, right. Looks like is really tricky business. I mean, I'm sure if the first humanoids, right, okay, who are capable of are remembering a circumstance, and they remember when Joe died, and and then they migrate back a year later and they find a place where Joe died, where they had to leave him because he wasn't moving anymore, and they find some bones and shit, and they start looking at him and saying, gee, this is what's left of Joe, I guess. But that's it. Reverence? Come on. No, curiosity, yes. Anyway, I mean, they always want to reach for the more elaborate, fancier, gooey answer than the simple truth answer. So anyway, yeah, too bad before the question. Let me just see if there's before the question. So I guess the chick will be gone. Let's see if I can find the last bit before the chick shows up. Okay, this sounds like applause. I mean, it looks like applause. He's smiling. So maybe right in here is the end.
Gratitude and similar things is one of the psychological predispositions that has led people to religion, along with probably quite a lot of other psychological predispositions. So that's a possible evolutionary reason why we feel an urge to give thanks, even when we know that there's nobody to thank.
I don't think that's what religious people are doing. Do you really think religious people throughout history have been thanking God for threatening them with hell and giving them shit on earth with this promise of a heaven? Do you really see that in most religions, that there's some sort of like giving thanks? I mean, really? Oh, please.
It's nothing to be ashamed of, and I hope the first part of my talk gave sufficient reason for our gratitude to be alive, even if it is gratitude in a vacuum. I end.
Oh, really? This idea, yeah, I'm really grateful to be thrust into this pigsty you're calling a civilization. I mean, this is why this is a reason to have a little bit of contempt for this pompous fuck shit. I mean, sorry, but god damn it. I mean, that is just so... Why should I be grateful to have, read about the Holocaust when I was 11 years old or whatever, and to find out that human beings will, hate people and put them in camps and starve them to death and kill them? Why would I be grateful for this knowledge? Why would I be grateful to go outside and see a cat run over in the street? Why the fuck would I be grateful for that? I mean, fuck this goddamn bullshit terminology. Grateful. I mean, it's just the system's running so well. It's such a great car. The human race car. Oh, yeah, it's so kick. It's a regular Lamborghini. It's, yeah, it goes about 4 miles an hour backwards and consumes about, I don't know, 600, gallons of gas per mile. I mean, it's a piece of shit. Alright? Grateful? Fuck. Grateful for my addiction. My pointless and silly horniness.
With my gratitude to you for listening. Thank you very much.
Yeah, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's sappy. So I'll give you a sappy for that. They really have sappies. Instead of Nobel Prize, just give people sappies. I mean, that was just sappy bullshit. Science, there could be an acronym for like scientists full of their own bullshit or something. Put in some PPY stuff in there. Anyway, so yeah, so I guess I'll post this. Not a great video, but whatever. I'm going to post it anyway. And such. It is what it is.